Today, we're looking at a blue ink by Waterman Inspired Blue. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. There's timestamps down below so that if you are only interested in certain parts, you can skip around, but if you've got the time, please check out the entire video. Also, you can follow me over on Instagram, and if you like fountain pen ink reviews, I would invite you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Sailor, my first pen with a medium fine nib. I wrote with it for a day and used it to take the notes for this video. In order to have some standardization, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper in the first writing samples, although there is an additional writing sample with different papers later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it comes in a vial something like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1, which we're going to look at that writing, although I had to scratch it out to put Inspired Blue because for some reason I completely mixed this up. So when we get to the harmonious green, you're going to see it saying Inspired Blue crossed out with harmonious green on the side. But we can look at the writing to see what goes on. The 1.1 gives no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is quite a bit darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 9 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the stub or as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation because there is none. Tomoe River, no bleeding. Normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is quite a bit darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 13 seconds to dry. The medium is a little bit darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 18 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get any. And then Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is a bit darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 10 seconds to dry. The medium is ever so slightly darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 13 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it and we didn't get it. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see that this is a very light blue. It's a true blue, but it's very light. It pushes its way up, just as you would expect, lighter, working its way up, a little bit darker as it goes. Now the one on the right that I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water basically looks the same, which makes you say, I don't expect any kind of real resistance here. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page and how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I'm impressed with how well it did, although I wouldn't use it in a note-taking situation because of the amount of blowout that is occurring, but I'm surprised that it held together that well based on the chromatography and based on what we see with water. Now, water is completely reactivating and lifting it off the page, leaving a lot of white behind, meaning water is all that you need to get this out of your pen. Now, pen flush looks like it's leaving some more, but it's actually the way I dabbed it to pick it up. I'm just dabbing the paper towel and holding it there for a second, which does leave a little bit of that ink there, but we don't need pen flush. The 1/3 bleach solution, as you would expect, you don't need it, but it obliterates it. I test ink viscosity with a tilt test that I'll link somewhere. Now for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Waterman Inspired Blue has a viscosity of 1.73, making this a wet ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those, and what I found is the average dry time is 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Waterman's Inspired Blue has an average dry time of 9 seconds, making this a faster drying ink. Instead of finding inks that look like Waterman's Inspired Blue, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. So I decided to go with a nice brown, and Diamine Macassar. The second writing sample is done on yellow Rhodia, black and red, and Franklin Christoph paper. Here we're looking at the yellow Rhodia, and I felt that with this being such a light blue, what a great thing to see how this can affect the color. Now, it still comes across as a blue, but it's definitely a bit turquoise leaning. Now, it's not making a tremendous change in the ink color, meaning if you're using this in a professional environment, it would still pass as a blue, but we definitely see some tone changes when they're next to each other. Just to have that in mind. Black and red notebooks. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. 3 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. 5 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get any. Last up, Franklin Christoph. No bleeding, no ghosting. I put a little mark for some bleed because I see just 1 or 2 tiny dots that appear on the medium, but you're really not going to see them yourself, so not too much of a problem. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 3 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 6 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it, and we didn't get it. And that is all that I have for the writing samples. So what do I think of Waterman's Inspired Blue? There's no shading in the writing, although you do get a bunch of color variation depending on what pen you choose. It's a pale blue, but it's not too pale to read on the page. So if you do like the paler, more gentle blues, this could be a very good one for you. For me, it's too light a tone for me to just comfortably read constantly. So what pen and nib give the best writing experience with this ink? Well, a dry fine is a great way to make this too light to comfortably read. You really need to go with a medium to wet flowing medium pen to put enough down to be able to read it without straining your eyes, but even then sometimes it might be a little too much. It's not enough color in here. So I would use it as a secondary ink on the page. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if it's your first time here, I'm going to remind you, if you enjoyed it, subscribe. Thanks for watching.